Rockenbach. I'm the host tonight for the Potomac Curling Club history discussion. And I want to welcome everybody to the chat. 38 people so far. This is really great. Thanks everybody for 39 people, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. So I guess what I'll do before we do some introductions, we'll go over a little bit of housekeeping. I see mostly everybody is on mute. That's great. Unless, the panel obviously will stay on their mics. And if anybody has something they really want to say without putting it as a question for the last half an hour, just raise your hand. I'll call on you and you can say whatever you want to say. There's definitely a couple other people from the panel who I didn't know were coming on tonight, who I also kind of want to talk to. And I'm really happy to do that. So let's see here. Couple of people I do want to point out who were here aside from our panel. I see one of our past presidents, Ann Drummy, is on the call. Hi, Ann. Good to see you. Welcome. I think I saw another, but I always like to acknowledge our past presidents. I think Adam is on the call as well. Adam, welcome. Good to see you. And I also wanted to thank everybody here who was on the board currently for setting this all up. This should be a great program tonight. So a little introduction about myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Joe Rockenbach. I am in my 16th season at Potomac Curling Club. I was the president in 2017, 2018, served on the board from 2012 to 2018, and I am also currently on the GNCC board of directors. Thanks to Bruce for putting me as a nominating person. So Bruce, I appreciate that very much.
You're welcome.
And let's see, other than that, let's do some introductions of our distinguished panel. Susan, introduce yourself. And when you do your introduction, I'd like to know when you joined Potomac, how long you've been curling, and any sort of like curling leadership roles you've had either at Potomac or other clubs or above that, like regional or even US curling. So Susan, introduce yourself, and then we'll just go down the line.
Susan, you're on mute.
Susan, you're on.
Think I'd be better at this. So I started curling in 1999 over at Chesapeake Curling Club. And then I joined Potomac, I think it was 2002. I spent several years on the board and doing the books for Potomac, but nothing else too exciting than that.
Thank you. Dawn, you are here. Welcome.
Welcome. When did I start curling? God, a long time ago. I got back from the armed forces and a friend of mine said, hey, my boyfriend and I are curling. Do you want to come try? And I did. And so that's when I started. I think it was back in 2002, maybe? No, before that. No, 87. I got to go back a long time. So I've curled in many cities, started in Ottawa, went to London, Toronto, curled in Potomac. I ran the ladies league in the Toronto Avon League Club for a couple of years. And then I've run the ladies league in Potomac with Susan for a few years, been on the board, was the director, vice president, was the treasurer for a while. I've been the USWCA rep for Potomac. I think that's it.
That's it.
Everything.
Wait, a resume. Thank you, Dawn. Bruce, let's introduce yourself. Even though everyone here knows you.
Most of you know me. I'm Bruce. I started curling at Potomac Curling Club in the fall of 1986. I've been curling for Potomac for roughly 35 years now. I started curling in the fall of 1970 at a Winchester Curling Club, or Winchester Country Club Curling, just outside of Boston. Graduated high school, went up to New Brunswick, Canada, curled for University of New Brunswick, and also the Capital Winter Curling Club in Fredericton. Now, Ann Drummy knows Fredericton quite well. I've been on the board. This is my 14th year on the board. I served 9 years on the board back in Cabin John days, 6 years as vice president to Bob Pelletier. And I've done 2 3-year stints at Potomac Curling Club while we've been in the new facility. Curling is a passion, love the sport, and want to continue. So I've been curling for roughly 51 years now.
Amp.
Then our final panelist is Bob. Bob, please introduce yourself.
You're on mute,
You're on
Bob.
mute, Bob. Just unmute yourself.
Upper right-hand corner.
Good
There you
evening, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. And hi, Jay. It's great to see you here. You can help me out tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Bob Pelosi. For all of you who don't know me, I've been a member of our club, Potomac, since 1988. And I grew up in Niagara Falls, Ontario, where I learned to curl. Then the next place I got to curl was when I was stationed at Minot Air Force Base while I was in the Air Force. And then had a number of assignments while I was in the Air Force, came back to Washington, and I joined up the Potomac Club in 1988. And it's been a wonderful job. I was the president for 12 years, and I went over, it was the last part of Cabin John and the opening of the new club over in Laurel. If you want to know what I've done, I was in the president of the Grand National. You want to know that, Joe? You're on mute, Joe.
Cheers to the for the host for doing that. Yeah, Bob, please share us a little bit more about your other roles in curling outside of GNCC.
Okay, well, I was the president of the Grand National Curling Club for 2 years, and then on the board of directors of the U.S. Curling Association for 8 years. So I had a lot of experience in the operating and management of curling, local area and at the national level. And
Very
it's
good.
really wonderful to be here tonight and see you all again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your introductions. One other housekeeping item. If you do have questions, do send them directly to me in the chat. And we're going to allot at least the last half an hour for questions. If it's a question that's really pertinent and you really need to have it answered again, just raise your hand and you can unmute yourself and ask that question. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is pre-Cabin John. I know Bruce and Bob, you both were talking to me a little bit about that last week when we had our prep session. Bob, can you talk a little bit about, from my understanding, we had ice at an old supermarket, we think?
Yeah, that was up in Silver. I know I wasn't here then. And apparently it was an old Safeway store that finally closed, and the curling club members had no place to curl. But fortunately, Cabin John opened up in 1970, and they were one of the first clubs to be in the Cabin John facility, where they curled for over 30 years every Monday night.
Yep.
Is that right, Bruce?
That's right.
Yeah.
Monday
And
nights at
was
Cabin John.
founded by 6 members of the Canadian Embassy who were here in Washington and wanted to continue curling. And they did a remarkable job in keeping the club going for that period of time.
Hal, I think you had your hand raised. Is there something you want to add to that? Mute.
Mute. Hal, you're on mute.
Mute.
Here we go. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, Hal.
See, I know I'm supposed to keep quiet, but I joined the club the year before Bob did, and we cannot thank this guy enough
Yes.
for having this club
That's right.
even exist. But oh, I know. You said something about we were there every Monday night. It was 2 draws every Monday night. That was
Every
it.
Monday night.
That was it.
Yeah. And then Bob, I know also with kind of the earlier members of the club and the founders and things like that, you were mentioning to me you want to talk a little bit about Matt Waddell, the person who our curler, our most distinguished member is named after. Anything you want to kind of talk a little bit about with Mr. Waddell?
I curled only a couple of years with Matt. Absolutely fantastic person and a great supporter of the club. And we were honored to have our most outstanding member of the year named in his honor. And anybody else here curl with Matt, Bruce, or Jay?
I did for several years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the award was first awarded to a distinguished curler in Potomac Curling Club in 1986. I believe he passed in 1996. I believe he passed a couple of years before that. I still have his beer mugs here and a number of his pins, and I know where his sweater is, but I'm not able to get a hold of his sweater.
Ooh.
I'll work on that.
Very good. Very good. Cool. And then Bob, also, is there anything you can kind of recall, like pre-Cabin John days, or Bruce, or anyone else who was part of who kind of knew a little bit about the pre-Cabin John days, that anybody wants to just kind of chime
the
in on, or-
pre-Cabin John days.
Yeah.
You're talking about Cabin. I don't know about the pre-Cabin John.
Well, the only thing I really know about pre-Cabin John is what you've already brought up, in that an old Safeway supermarket was used as a curling club, and there were 3 or 4 sheets in the club, and the configuration of the Safeway when it was taken over was kind of a trapezoid type shape. So sheet 1 was regulation length, and sheet 2 got a little bit shorter, and sheet 3 got even shorter, and sheet 4 was clearly not up to regulation length. And they curled on that, but they did curl on it. People came out and they curled anyway.
And they survived.
Yeah, and they survived. And that would have probably been in the late 70s.
Yeah. Mid 60s, because Cabin John.
Yeah, late 60s, right.
They got into Cabin John in 1970.
Yep, late 60s.
And
All right, so let's talk a little bit now about Cabin John. Bruce, I'm gonna just kind of let you start this one. Anything kind of immediately come to mind, or you want to talk a little bit about? I heard the ice conditions weren't terribly ideal. It was full of character. Kind of curious how you guys broom stacked. Just
well,
about that stuff.
there was a lot of fun there. When we brought the stones out on the ice, they were stored in a wooden box at the end of the sheet. And we'd have the ice from about 8 to midnight. And then there was like a 1 o'clock in the morning hockey league that came out. So we had to get the stones on the ice, get everything in, but we had to put the hacks into the ice, which were on a steel plate that melted into the ice. And we brought the stones on the ice, and the stones are at 45 degrees. And so they'd melt into the ice. And so the first 2 or 3 ends, the stones were really, really slow and wet. And by the time it got to the end of the game, they'd be up to speed, but you had Zamboni ridges, and you could aim at the broom on the center of your sheet, and it would end up 3 sheets over for left to go. In the early days, when I got there in 86, the end of the ice rink and the side of the ice rink were open to the weather. And so during the year, we would have leaves and snow come on the ice while we're curling. And the worst was in the springtime, when it started to get a little bit warmer out, you'd get the fog. And Bob can tell you about the fog, and Hal can tell you about the fog.
Yeah.
But you would be throwing a stone and you wouldn't be able to see to the near hog line. And the stone would just rumble down the ice, and people would be sweeping like crazy, and the skip would be down there and you couldn't see him.
Came right out of the blue. Huh?
The stone would come out of the fog into the house. If you could throw it that hard, it was difficult to get it to the other end.
Bruce, I wanted to mention we had metal hacks that we had to put in
Yep.
every night, and bring them out early and have them freeze into the ice. And they worked out very well.
They did work out well. And then it was taking them out was the problem.
Yeah, you had to
Sledgehammer.
bang them out.
We took a sledgehammer to it and took out the ice all the way down to the concrete.
Roman, you want to share something about that, please?
Yes, he mentioned the fog, and the skip had to put the broom way up in the air so you could see it. And that was the way you shot the stone down the ice. That was a lot of fun. Then of course, the two ends near the the boards, you had to almost put the aim of the broom toward the boards in order to get it on the bullseye.
Yep.
I was mentioning to Joe and Bruce and Susan the other night, there was one game, when we played our matches, there was always a winner, no tie. And so we skipped rocks. In one game, there were two skips that had to throw the rocks. And every time, and they were on the sheet and they were on the outside. And every time the rock kept sliding way over, no matter what you did. And they finally, about eight shots, they finally got a score.
I was one of those skips.
Oh, you were?
Yes, I got the Spanner Award that year.
Well, we're going to touch on that later.
Ed Blodgett and I played the whole
Ed
damn
Blodgett.
game, and then we
Oh,
had to shoot about 8 times to get one in for the Skips Rocks.
I recall standing in the penalty box holding the broom on the far sheet 5. Yeah.
Ann, I kind of see you reacting to this as well. Is there anything you wanted to add?
My experience at Cabin John was maybe all of 3 visits, because I was there maybe the fall just before we opened the new building, and I decided I could wait until the new building, having come down from Montreal. But I had learned negative ice in Montreal, and that really helped at Cabin John, understanding that you could aim for something that was not on your sheet. And aim for something that, was above your skip's head. So all of that is true. And I would be curious to hear other stories, as you alluded to, about how we did broom stacking while at Cabin John. That
Jen,
was very new to me.
The
yeah, I
broom
think you had
stacking,
your hand raised. Is there something you wanted to add about broom stacking? Because I'm sure you have a good story about that.
I unfortunately was with Heather Schreiber, one of the 2 houses that was close to Cabin John, that were arm wrestled into being the host for the broom stacking after these events. And Heather wasn't so bad because she lived alone with their boys, and late nights weren't so bad. But for me, we'd have Tim Arwood and Charlie Jennings staying till 2:33 in the morning, laughing loudly. My wife wasn't real happy about our hosting of these.
Yeah, I remember those days. The other one was Jack Trant. Remember going over to
Yes,
Jack
yeah.
Trant's house? Jack
Yes.
Trant was over in Potomac, and it was a short drive from the curling club, and we used to hang out in his basement or go over to Hamburger Hamlet. The other place was Hamburger
that was
Hamlet.
what I was going to mention, Bruce. The Hamburger Hamlet was,
Yep.
we did that over.
You have to race like hell after a game to get there before they closed.
Yeah, that's
Because if there
Especially
weren't
later
bodies
on.
there, they'd close early. Yeah.
Dawn, did you ever throw a rock or 2 at Cabin John, or did you kind of see it and say, what the hell are these people doing here?
I never did. I didn't join Potomac. I moved to the area in January 2002, and they opened in February 2002. So that was when I joined.
Aha, I see. Dave Norman, I want to thank you for bringing up that question about broom stacking. Roman, you have your hand raised. Please, what do you got to say?
Was it mentioned that in order to curl, they had the ice making machine on the ice, making ridges all over, and that was kind of hard to curl with that kind of situation too.
Yeah, did you guys
We
have any-
also used to have the
Every
stalagmites on the ice.
every Monday night, we had to have a group come out because the curling started at 8 o'clock, and they would come out, and once the Zamboni went across, we had to pebble the ice, put in the hacks, and then carry all the 5 sheets of rocks out onto the ice. So it's a big project just to get set up, wasn't it, Roman? And
Yes.
yeah, and
Yes, it was. And the
everybody did a
stones were
wonderful.
warm too. That was the problem, is the stones were warm.
Yeah.
And
Then we curl from 8. First draw would go from 8 to about 10, and then the second draw, which nobody liked, 10 to midnight.
Right.
Yep.
I don't know.
So if you run the 10 to midnight, you usually didn't get to go to the broom stacking, but some people did, didn't they?
Yep.
Bruce, can you comment on like the quality of those rocks? I'm sure they had seen better days, or
The rocks, chips in them, the bottom of the surface, the running surface of the stones were pretty poor. They were a little bit underweight, and I'm not certain what happened to those stones after.
I know, Bruce. I know what happened.
what happened?
Yeah.
Did they come over to the Potomac briefly?
No, they didn't. No, we donated all those stones to the Grand National. Well, I don't know how they went ahead and distributed them.
Right.
Anybody remember Dave Sleam and Mark Longbrake?
Michael Fry, welcome. You have your hand raised. Do you know the fate of the?
Oh, well, no, I was just going to comment on Bruce's comment about the quality of the stones. I mean, the bottom line is that nobody would have any idea how good or bad they were because the ice was so bad. It didn't matter
Right,
what
that's
what the
true.
running surfaces were like or whether they were chipped or underweight. I mean, it was just abysmal curling. So the rocks were like, who even gave thought to the rocks?
Well, they went somewhere up in, they had people come down from Ardsley and up other clubs up north and took them all away. And I don't know where they all wound up. But anybody remember Dave Sleam and Mark Longbrake?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just,
Those two guys did a great job.
I just talked to Dave.
We were able to buy used stones, but they were in much better. Yes, Al.
You mentioned Longbrake. Just spoke with him by one of these kind of sessions the other day for the Columbus Curling Club. He's now in Connecticut, but he went from from Potomac to Columbus, where we started the club there. He was very helpful, and then eventually he went to St. Louis, and I guess now he's in Connecticut. I'm not sure where. I think he's probably with the Nutmeg. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
He's still with it.
Well, okay.
He,
Anyway, Dave and Mark rented a truck, and we picked up some stones we paid for them from used stones from the Grand National that were in much better condition than the ones we had at Potomac, and drove them up to. There's a company up in London, Ontario, that refurbishes the stones. I don't know what magic they do, but they made them all really at least good for curling. And those were the first rocks that we had at Potomac. And when they brought them all back, and we had to store them out in the ice rink because we still didn't have the ice in.
So it seems like it was pretty safe to say, like what Michael had said earlier, that the actual curling itself at Cabin John was not good. But a lot of people stuck around. So I think it's safe to say that the reason everybody stuck around was because of the people that you were playing with. Bruce, Bob, I think, Hal, Jay, is that Roman? I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that. Is there anything, like Bruce or Bob, and then we'll talk to like maybe Hal and Jay about some of the people that you maybe want to talk about, who were some characters at Potomac during the Cabin John days? Bruce?
I'll certainly chime in on that one. A lot of what kept me at the club were the people that you curled with. And, we alluded to this when we spoke last week, that for us to be able to go over to Chesapeake was a real joy because you got over on the real curling ice. And there were a lot of things that developed in camaraderie between Potomac and Chesapeake during that time. But we had some characters in the club. And, I went back and I was looking at the presidents of the club, and I curled with or knew all but 4 of them, of the presidents since the founding in 1961. And there were some real characters in the club. But the one story I like to tell is about Stu Godden, who was our treasurer.
Yeah.
And Stu Godden.
Yeah, we remember him.
Stu Godden was a very interesting guy. His profession, he was the comptroller of the currency of the United States. And he probably had the first dime he ever earned. He was a miser. And we all got over to Chesapeake Curling Club and went down to the local VFW with Bob Pelche, because he brought us there. And it was the one place where you could gamble. and they had a one-arm bandit, a slot machine. And Stu had quite a few to drink. And he's putting money into the slot machine. He's pulling the arm, and he's pulling the arm. And I'm standing next to him, we're pretty drunk. And I see a blue 7 with gold trim, blue 7 with gold trim, blue 7 with gold trim. The light on top of the machine starts flashing and screaming. Well, bells and whistles are going off, and the money is pouring out of the machine. And Stu turns to me and goes, "Is that good?" Laughed, and I said, "Yes, it is." And yelled to the bar, the drinks were on the house thanks to Stu. And Stu couldn't put the money in his pockets fast enough as it was rolling out of the machine. And we had a pretty good night that night. And I think there are a bunch of us that were there that are on this call. Al, you were there. I know Bob was.
Yep.
We had some real characters in that club. A lot of fun people to curl with.
Jay, you got your hand raised. What would you like to share?
We're talking about how bad the ice was at Cabin John.
We can talk about how bad the ice was. We can talk about the characters. We can talk about Cabin John is the topic at hand right now. So tell me what you'd like to say.
So with negative ice and fog and terrible rocks. Well, one year, for crazy reasons, I got we kind of pulled teams out of a hat. And Derek Circa and Carissa Lynn and I were on one team. And Derek was a serious curler, as you know. I thought I was a serious curler too. Well, we're on the same team, and we thought, well, we're just going to play. We can shoot, we can do takeouts, we can do everything. Well, Cabin John ice doesn't work that way, and I don't think we won a game that league. How unfair is that?
Joe, is it all right if I change the subject briefly?
Yes, actually, I was going to move on from Cabin John and maybe talk a little bit about the transition from Cabin John to Potomac, unless there's something you want to add on a different topic.
Well, I wanted to mention one of the places where we did a lot of our recruiting and all of our members really pitched in were the Alexandria Scottish Games.
Mm-hmm.
Aha.
Yep.
And that's Michael's raising. Dominique, we signed her up. We signed Michael Fry up. Carl and Sasha Duncan. Carl became our lawyer for the building committee. And Dominique Banville. And Linda Murphy and Neil Christensen. We got all of those people. They came by the Scottish Games, and it was sort of a hard game to sell in those days. And
Yeah, it was.
Joe made some boards with circles at each end, and then made them slippery. And we brought out stones, and people would walk by and see somebody shooting the stone, and they all laughed. What's that? Because curling was not very well known in those years. But we picked up 10 or 15 members from that Scottish Games. I just wanted to mention that and all the members came out and really supported that.
Does anybody know roughly what was the membership size of Potomac when you all were at Cabin John?
Normally
Bruce,
about
you?
60.
Bob?
Normally about 60.
Probably 60.
60 or so.
Okay. Very cool. Did you guys host any events, or was it just league nights?
Just league nights.
Just
League
leagues?
night.
No
We-
bonds?
We only had the one Monday night, and we didn't try to get the ice. The ice was very expensive if you tried to get it special.
Although we would co-host the Meltdown with Chesapeake.
Yeah, that's
Right.
It would put on
that's where
by
Chesapeake came in.
Chesapeake,
Yep.
and the following year be put on by Potomac.
Yeah.
And we
Now, on a related note, Susan, you started curling at Chesapeake, correct? Mute. You're on mute.
There we go. Yes, I did. I
Yes,
started
yeah.
at Chesapeake.
Now, you curling at Chesapeake when Potomac was not at the current facility?
Correct. Right.
And did you have any thoughts of these jokers coming over from Potomac and taking over Chesapeake's curling ice?
No, I thought it was great. Get to meet more people.
Yeah.
It was definitely good.
Did
Linda
you like
Murphy.
get an advantage on playing on actual dedicated ice?
Well, I was so new, I didn't really. I didn't have an appreciation for what they were dealing with, going back and forth.
The other good thing, and Susan, we, it was like a rental. We paid them, and that was very good for them financially.
So, all right. Well, so let's move on a little bit. Yes, Hal, what do you got to say before we move on? And then Roman.
I'd like to tell a story that relates to Chesapeake and
Please.
also to some other people that have been mentioned here. When I first came to Potomac, they said, "Oh, we've got this thing, the Bay Hoppers, and we can go over to Chesapeake where we get dedicated ice." And Jack Trant got me over there. Remember that his name came up, didn't it? We used to do the
Yep.
broom stacking at his place. And Stu Godden was was in this involvement, and we drove all the way from Harlington over to the Chesapeake rink, and we get out of our car and they're walking in, and here comes Jay Davies and a couple of other people with their brooms walking out. I thought, my God, was there an earlier draw or what the heck? The ice was out. It was just water. So we ended up with Jack Trant saying to Stu and I, "Okay, since we're over here on the Eastern Shore, I'm going to give you a tour." And we spent the rest of the day on the Eastern Shore. So that was my first curling experience with the Chesapeake Curling Club, thanks to many names that have already been mentioned. It was a great
Roman,
place.
I think you had your hand raised as well.
Yes, we were called the Bay Hoppers. Just wanted to throw that in.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. There was a trophy. I don't know if that still
Yeah,
exists.
the Bay Hoppers trophy still exists.
I got my name on it a couple of times.
Yeah, no trip to Chesapeake was complete without going over to the Chop Tank bar.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yay.
You remember the Chop Tank?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. So, all right. So I kind of want to just set the scene a little bit. So you've been curling at Cabin John for a while, and then as many of us know, if not all of us on this call know, that Bob was very influential, the primary person influential of getting this club that we know today started. Bob, what was kind of the origin story for that, and if you could kind of elaborate, how we got the facility, the great facility that we have today.
Well, one thing I want to make known right now, Joe.
Yeah.
One of the really important guys that really got this club built was Jay Davies. He was chairman of the building committee. So he did a magnificent job getting us all together in that. But I go back to 1996, Jay, you remember, we drove over to Cabin John Rink, not Cabin, to the Gardens Ice House. It was pouring rain and mud, and they had to transport us up into the club because we were meeting with Clay Carr to see if he would be interested in us building a curling club. And he agreed. He eventually agreed, and eventually became a great friend and partner of our club. But he agreed that we'd go ahead and start building. And one of the good deals was it was $1 a year lease that we established with him, that allows us to curl, and that expires in 2035. But we have 2 5-year extensions on that. And I know if Bruce is working the Capital Improvement Committee, if we expand our club, we would have to renew our lease. Is that right, Bruce?
That's correct.
The other good thing about Gardens Ice House is that we had a parking lot was available, and the owner of the garden and Clay Carr wanted us to be there. He wanted to make that a big winter sports complex. And boy, did it work out. So Jay, you can jump in here every time and help me, because I'm just trying to remember. We're talking 26 years ago. We appointed the building committee, and on the committee, Jay was the chairman, our architect and builder, and myself, I was on it as the president. Our attorney was Carl Duncan, who was pro bono the whole time. He did everything for us. He got all the permits, the licensing, applications, incorporation papers, and all that. Carl was a wonderful guy. And I always remember the days of Virginia Scottish game. Sarah Joe and I were in the tent, and I'd gone away to get a beer or something. And they walked up, and Sarah Joe signed Carl and Sasha up that day. Boy, did that pay off. And then we had the CPA, Roman, who took care of getting the 501c3 and doing the audit and other things like that. Roman, what else did you do, Roman?
Let's, Jay, I think let's I'd like to hear what you had to say about that too, since you got your hand raised to that. Please.
Well, we chased a lot of sites. Bob even had us out at Fort Meade. We were looking at an old building out there that we could put some ice in. We went to Chevy Chase Club on Connecticut Avenue. We promised to build an ice rink next to their clubhouse. We'd build it. We were competing with, the skating club in Montgomery County, and they wanted more facilities. And I think our last venture, if I remember right, Bob, was at Wheaton Ice Rink, and we went there. Yeah. And we were again fighting with the skating club. They wanted the county to build a facility. Well, in my Rotary Club, Gail Ewing was the Montgomery County Council President, and she introduced us to Senator Dorman from Maryland, who luck could be in 1999, 2000, the state of Maryland had some cash. And we went into Dorman, and he'd been hearing from the skating club that they wanted something built, and the county were hearing from the skating club. And we went in with our old newsletters showing this family sport. We've got men, women, kids, and we said, let's build something together. And Senator Dorman jumped on that. He said, this is the best group. They don't demand to have something built for them. They said, we're going to do something together. And he was behind us. And
he sure was.
He stepped up to get some state money that we matched, and then got money through the World Curling and a very, very supportive local bank, Sandy Spring Bank. And that was what pulled it off, because we're let's do it together kind of attitude.
And we started out with $20,000.
Yeah.
Some of the fundraising we had, and it cost about $1.3 million eventually.
It was like 1.47.
Yeah, and I remember going to one of the annual meetings, and Joe mentioned that we paid off all our loans this year, which was really wonderful news. And I think, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, we had a financial planner, Wayne Caskey. Remember?
Yeah, yes.
He was the one that went out and got the bank loan, and we had to have guarantors for the loan. Got two members of other GNC clubs that put up $25,000 each to guarantee our loan from the Sandy Spring Bank.
Yeah, we had a lot of trouble with banks thinking they should loan a curling group some money. And so, we had to have some good people to back us up. Barry Nichols is one of our big backers.
I do want to, Dawn, something you had to add? So you got
I was just going to say, they did do some fundraising, because that's how I first heard about Potomac Curling Club.
Oh.
I was at a mixed bonspiel at the Cleveland Curling and Skating Rink with my mixed team from Canada.
Yeah.
And Deb Farace and Hal Mcgrady were there, and they sold auction tickets for this beautiful crystal sculpture of the Capitol building, and auctioned it off during the bonspiel to raise funds. And that's how I first heard of Potomac Curling Club.
Can I say something about Caskey? Caskey, I kind of talked him into doing what was just discussed there about what he did. And several years later, I was back and saw him at the curling club, and he said, I really didn't want to have to do all that stuff, but he says, I'm glad I did it. And so I feel that I had some contribution to the fact that he said to me, he said, that's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life.
Tim, I see you got your hand raised too. What would you like that?
Yeah, question to both Jay and Bob. Weren't we close to a deal at Cap and John also? Wasn't
Yeah,
there some talk there?
I think that all fell through, didn't it, Jay?
Yeah.
At the 11th hour, we had worked hard, and I don't remember the gentleman we talked to. We were going to try to build a 3-sheet club, wasn't it, Jay?
Yeah, we chased a lot of loose ends for many years, and it wasn't until we got with Senator Dorman from the state of Maryland and Clay Carr at the Gardens Ice House that it actually came together.
Michael, what you got to add?
I don't, I just wanted to remind everybody that we weren't the only ones who had trouble with this. Anybody remember that Connie Morella, who was a former Maryland member of Congress, I think seat 8 in Silver Spring area, ran an ad probably must have been 2000 against somebody, her opponent, might have been Dorman or somebody else, whoever supported our getting money, and said in the narration that this person had supported money for a curling club in a very sneering kind of tone.
Yeah, that's right.
So
I remember
was the
Michael
of an attack ad, a political attack ad.
Yeah,
It was a
I
political
mean, it wasn't the
attack
whole.
ad.
It wasn't by any stretch the whole ad, but it was a line in the ad.
we had a lot of members from Montgomery County who immediately went after her.
Yep.
I remember one Saturday we were out there curling, and they said, Bob, Connie Morella is here. And she came and apologized. She didn't know what curling was. And I guess somebody on her staff read the riot act.
Oh, man. Bruce, you wanted to add about that?
Oh, I was just going to say that Connie Morella, once she found out what curling was all about, promised that should she win her next election, which she didn't, that she would hold a fundraiser or something over at our curling club.
And I'd like to mention one other thing Bob did in that regard too. He literally made us stop in the middle of a bonspiel at Chesapeake, and we marched over to to Baltimore to testify before a committee that was passing the bill that got us the
I remember that. I remember you guys getting all dressed up and
That was in Annapolis.
Anytime you intercede into a bonspiel, it's really serious.
Wow.
It was before we played.
Yeah.
Not after.
And
You wanted to add something?
During.
yeah, well, we were fortunate.
Real quick, and then I think Roman had his hand raised, but Bob, go ahead.
I wanted to mention we did have an on-the-spot construction engineer during the building of the club, and that was Barry Nichols, right, Jay? Jay?
It's affirmative.
Jay, are you
We're
there?
going to say something?
He said yes, Bob.
Oh, yeah, and
Barry.
also Jay, Barry Nichols and Jay, and they worked full-time on site with the construction company Waverly to ensure that the club was built. They both did a wonderful job. And the other committee on the building committee, I believe, was the fundraising and public relations. And that was John Bittner and Deb Parachi, and they sent out all the mailings. We sent out mailings to all the curlers in the United States. It was incredible the amount of response we got on that, because we were the first club to be the first curling only facility built in the United States since 1974, and that was the Cape Cod Curling Club.
Yep.
And we were the southernmost dedicated facility for quite some time, if my memory is right, weren't we? Yeah. So I wanted to answer.
I wanted to make sure.
I wanted to see if I can get an answer from
Jay and Barry
proposed.
did a wonderful job. And
Does Bob or Bruce or I'm sorry, let me Roman, you had your hand raised. My apologies. What would you like to add?
With respect to the contribution by the state of Maryland, I believe that was about 200,000, or was it 250,000?
Yeah, you're right.
250.
250.
And when all of the financing was put together, we were still short. And Barry Nichols came up with the difference.
Yep.
That was a lot of money he put up.
Roman, I always remember the
Do you have
story.
what the budget was when this was put together? Like about how much this project cost?
1.3 million?
1.3 million.
But it was an overrun though. Didn't it go to like 1.4, 1.47? I don't.
Yeah,
I don't recall
I
that.
thought it was just under, shade under 1.5.
yeah.
Tim,
We-
you had
we
your hand
did- We ran short. And you can see, we didn't get the ceilings in. We didn't have doors on. We didn't have the kitchen. Deb Ferracci got the kitchen because her neighbor was remodeling the kitchen and the cabinets are sitting out in the curb in her neighborhood. And we picked up the cabinets and built the kitchen out of it the first time.
And
you had your
and-
hand raised.
and to add to that, the fellow that I was working for at the time was getting rid of some file cabinets. That's how we ended up with the beer cabinet that we had for a number of years. That was our refrigerator. He donated that to us, and
And Baker got the lockers from.
yeah,
church,
lockers
I think.
we bought from a department store or something. Didn't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I was going to talk about the mailings. We would, in the evenings, we would drive over to Bittner's place, and we had this assembly line, just stuffing envelopes, folding, stuffing envelopes, putting out, postage on it, and then all, have a beer or two, and then go on home. And that's, it was all grassroots stuff that got us to where we are.
And one of the other ways we saved a lot of money was all the club members came out and laid down the dirt floor and installed and helped the company CNY install the tubing to have, in order to get the ice going. Members did all that. They did all the interior work in our club, painting and both the warm room and the ice shed. And like everybody mentioned, or Cam did, they provided all the furniture and appliances to get our club going. And
That is quite
anonymous donor provided us with the TVs that we had up there for the on top of the ice.
We arrived one morning at the construction site to see all the tubing and the great big rolls, about probably 100 feet away from the side entry doors. We couldn't get them through the front, so we had to take them through the side. Well, if you notice on the side, there's a little bit of a berm. Well, we rolled these things across to the top and got parallel with the door, and then turned them, and some fool had to stand and hold it as this tubing rolled down the hill to get it into the to the shed. It was a fun day, and of course we're trying not to puncture the tubes. It was interesting.
Yeah.
My back still hurts from screeding the floor with the sand, with the 2x4s across the ground. Lots of fun. It's a fun time.
Jay, what you got to say?
When we built the partitions, it's a bunch of people that don't do that stuff. It was metal stud partitions, and when the drywall started showing up, we realized we weren't 4 feet on center, so that it wasn't working out so swell. And I said, well, we're gonna have to put a bunch of pieces in here to make this stuff fit. So I hope we don't have to take the partitions apart someday.
Yeah, I learned to be a carpenter and a painter and all that.
We also had great plans that there would be an office above the locker rooms until they started putting HVAC stuff in there, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller.
Is that why there's that empty space above the kitchen and where we I was up there one time when we had the pipe burst and we were aimlessly looking around for a shutoff valve. Is that why that's up?
There's the drop down stairs in front of the kitchen, and you go up there, and there's like a vestibule up there, and that's where we store all our stuff.
But that was
There's
to be an office.
there's a floor up there, and the county inspector goes, well, you
Yeah.
can't have a room up here. And we go, well, we needed something to stand on to work on the mechanicals.
That's right. Yeah, there's a floor up there, but that's where we keep all our, cherry blossom decorations and so on. It's just storage up
I
there.
think a handful of us have been up in there
Yeah.
for reasons that, we probably shouldn't have.
That's
been
where
up there.
Sarah Jo, that's where Sarah Jo stores all the cherry blossom decorations.
Yep, exactly.
All right, so I kind of want to just touch on a little bit. So now that we've got the building is up and it's ready to go, how many people, just by a quick show of hands, was there when the building first opened?
We
I was leaving at the time.
we opened in early February.
I was just leaving. I was helped flood and I left town. So that's it.
Don, what were you saying?
Oh, no, I was just raising my hand because I was there when it opened.
Oh, okay.
We had about 60 members. One thing I wanted to mention to everybody, it was, the most important thing was everybody on the building committee stayed the entire time. And we had ups and downs, and some nights, some days it was gloom and something was going to happen. But we had all the dedicated committee and all our dedicated members, because whenever we had an issue, one of our members seemed to know how to get the problem corrected. Don't you agree, Jay?
Yeah, I like to tell everybody the story. The board had a few years of trying to figure out when we were going to pull the trigger and actually do this. We didn't have enough members to really, to pay the nut for this. But Bob kept saying, if we build it, they'll come.
Yep.
And once we built it, well, of course, the Olympics came around too, but once we
get to
built
that.
it, holy smokes, our membership just took off.
Yes.
Yep.
So
Olympics.
Bruce or Bob in particular, or Dawn, can either of you recall what is the current facility's birthday, the day that it officially opened?
It was early February 2000.
February the 9th.
Was it
February
February 9th?
February the 9th.
That's right. That's the
February.
day Mom died. That's
Did
all.
you say, Jay?
Yeah, it was 2002.
Yeah, February the 9th,
February
2002. That's when we threw out the first stones, officially.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then it followed, we started organizing our leagues, and the Salt Lake City Olympics ended that month. And I remember we had an open house, the first weekend of open house, and over 700 people showed up.
Dawn, I want to get your take on that. You were at that open house as well?
No, I'm not sure if I was or not. I don't really remember. I think I was away.
Susan,
remember
were you at the
being
open
there.
house?
Button. Where's the button? Yeah, I don't remember. I remember being at an open house with Bob running it and the mass of people that were lined up all through the parking lot. So maybe if that was the one, or was it 4 years later? I don't know.
That was in 2006.
Okay,
I
that's
can,
the one.
I can tell you a little bit about that one, Joe, if you want.
Yes, please.
Yeah, we had where we started we had sections around the club, and in the men's locker room, we had a television set up with a video introducing them to curling. And then I happened to be working that room and would just talk a little bit about the club and everything. I don't know how many times I said the same presentation, but it was a lot. And I know when I left that night, I didn't have a voice left. And we just kept, we were hoping that maybe we get 100 people through there, and they just kept coming and coming and coming. And it sort of got to the point where we were just faking it because we weren't quite sure what to do. It was really overwhelming.
We were worn out. We were worn out,
yeah.
Sam.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, how did the word spread? How did everybody know that there is this curling club now? Was it people were seeking it out, or were you seeking people out? How
There-
exactly did that work? Like, Bruce, I kind of want to get your take on that.
Say that again.
It's, how did everybody learn about Potomac? Because I know, it was we didn't have the web presence that we had back then. It was probably a lot harder to get the message out. So I kind of want to.
I think Hal's got an answer for this one.
Oh, Hal, go ahead.
I don't have an answer, but I have you say, how did you find out?
Hmm?
I had curled in Illinois, and then I spent 13 years in Arizona. So then I came to Washington, and I think, God, they got to have curling here, right? They must have curling here. I called ice rinks. I did anything I thought to see if there was curling. And the way I found, by the way, even went to the Canadian Embassy, and they didn't know there was curling then.
That's right.
Even though they found it, the club. I guess I talked to the wrong person at the Canadian club. But anyway, the way I found out was in the Washington Post Weekender, and
Yep.
I was looking for a 10K race or something, and there it says curling. Now that's one way. So that's one way you find out, is by having something.
Yeah, the Washington Post usually is pretty good about putting on or circulating articles about curling. I know that's how I joined in 1986 by looking at the weekend section, as Hal referred to. Carol Flint, and if anybody remembers Carol Flint and Oliver Flint, Carol Flint was delivering a stone, and that would have been in September of 1986. And that's how I found out about the club. And I think, similarly, as we opened up the new facility, it was the Washington Post, and there were other articles out there that curling was taking place. You had the Olympics there as well, and people were just interested in the sport, having seen it.
Can you see this? It says Washington Weekender, Washington Post, January 11th, 1991. And this is Nancy Nelson.
Al, I got one for you too.
That was
Washington
that
Post. I take that back. The Washington Times, dated November 9th, 2000. And this was giving a heads up that the curling club was going to open. And up here you see Deb Faraci and Alan Rigglesworth. And if anybody remembers Bob Summerod.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We curled together in seniors for many years. When was this?
This was November 9th, 2000. So this is the Washington Times.
Oh, this was 1991.
Prior, this was as the club was being built, or we were anticipating building it. So this was about a year and a half, not quite a year and a half before the club opened.
There was another picture in that same. Just mentioned there was another. There was mention one other thing. There was another picture with this in the article, and it had a great picture of Gordy Stibbard's curling.
Yep.
That'll bring back some. Okay, sorry.
That's fine, Michael. Go ahead.
I'm done.
Two things. One is we actually, the club did have a website. I don't know when it went up, but Dave Sliam used to host it off of an account that he owned. So we didn't. I don't remember that we had our own domain at the time. It was providername.net/dsliam/curling or something like that. And then that was replaced by the site, or a version of the site that we see now. And the other thing is that the Post, I don't remember the date, but I have an archived or an old copy of a Post where they actually printed curling results from the club.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah,
Yes,
I can tell you about that.
Print money results in the sports section.
No, because
Bob, go ahead.
I was the one that sent those.
Get Bob's take on this, Hal. Bob, go ahead real quick.
Well, I was going to say, we got the U.S. Curling Association told me they got inundated with phone calls about curling in the D.C. area. And they were able to point them directly to our club, which is really nice.
Oh.
We didn't have an address or anything listed anywhere at that point.
All right, and Hal, you were going to say?
No, I was saying, I was the one that sent those scores in about the results from the curling. I got that
Yep.
started with the folks. I don't know how long they kept it up, but that's how it got started.
I've only ever found one.
Any of our current members, current board members, maybe we could try to slip those in and see what the post says nowadays. I'd love to see what they say. Tim, you got your hand raised. What would you like to add?
Yeah, Joe, you were asking about how did they find out about the new club? I think
Yes.
was your original question.
Correct.
I know that the Laurel Leader did a big article for us, and a lot of the local papers did. And in talking to a number of the folks that came out, they told me that they were aware that we were here, but there was no way that they were going to curl on ice hockey ice. And it wasn't until we were open that they came around and started. And I think that there's a lot. We got a lot of new members that way that were just waiting for better ice to arrive. And unfortunately, that happened.
Very cool. All right. Anyone else kind of recall? Michael, go please.
I was just going to say that I remember that we also, for a while, would put up a booth. Booth is not really the right word, but I think it was at Canada Day at the Canadian Embassy for a number of years. We would sort of advertise there. And as far as I know, that never yielded a thing, membership-wise. I mean, notwithstanding that we had a long history with Omar, who had been stationed there. I don't know that we ever recruited anybody from the Canadian Embassy through that effort. Maybe Anne.
Jay, and then we can hop over to Ann, and then I think Dave had his hand raised.
Yeah, we did it the early Facebook way. We put posters up at the Giant, Safeway, libraries, drugstores. We put it up on bulletin boards. A bunch of us just went around posting them up. And since we were a 501c3, thanks to Roman and so on, they said, well, if you're a nonprofit, you can put a poster up on our bulletin board. Old school.
Ann, is there something you wanted to add, or was I misreading that? There we go.
I believe I was being associated as a Canadian with the Canadian Embassy and standing at the barbecue on Canada Day, encouraging Canadians to remember that curling was in the nation's capital. And it did prompt a lot of, oh, I did that in high school. But to Michael's point, not very many actual conversions into members. Yeah. But the barbecue was great.
Dave, Norman, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just going to add that the way I found out about the club in Laurel was my wife and I came out with my daughter for a hockey game at the Ice House, and we drove up and I saw the sign, National Capital Curling Center, and I got really excited because I had curled as a kid, and I remember going next door, walking into the club as people do nowadays even, and I spoke with somebody, probably one of you jokers who's on this call right now, who was like touching up the wall, the drywall or something. The club was just on the verge of opening, and that was pretty exciting, I gotta admit.
No, I have to say that Dave, when he drove up, he goes, "Oh my God, there's a curling," and I was like, "Oh my God, yeah." And Nancy was doing her hockey, our daughter was doing her hockey, and he was just like, "Oh my God," and there it was, because he curled as a kid, and yeah, he was just like, "Oh and oh my God," yeah, it was awesome.
Bob, what were you going to add? I thought I saw your hand.
I wanted to add on something that I was going to talk what Ann did. I remember she sent a message down to the Canadian Embassy. It was in early October. What are you all doing on Canadian Thanksgiving? Which is, I guess, the first Monday in October. And we were going to have an open house. But I don't think very many people showed up.
I do have a question about the origin of the sign, the large National Capital Curling sign out front. Who, Bob or Bruce or anyone else, who was responsible for putting that together? Susan. Oh, you were just scratching your head. I'm sorry. I thought you were raising your hand. Does anybody know who was able to get that up and running?
I don't remember that.
I think it was Bittner.
Was it?
I think John Bittner.
Aha. Okay. All right. So yes, Michael.
You mean the sign on the building?
Front of the building.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I was in Philadelphia when the club was built, but I remember several years later there was a problem. Maybe just a light bulb went out, and Clay Carr next door was pretty adamant about getting that fixed. And I think I remember hearing somewhere that the sign, he had something to do with the sign. Like he wanted it to be professional looking, adult looking. It couldn't have been just a banner that we hung out off the building. It needed to be top-notch stuff.
Yep. Yeah, Clay was a big supporter, helped us with that sign, as I recall. Do you, Jay?
Yeah, John Bittner knew buddy in that sign company. And I was, I was a little more modest about the design, but Bittner said, no, this is what it's got to be. And when they put that sign up, I thought, holy baloney, that's huge. And Bittner and the sign company, they go, well, yeah, it's going to be big. And it was.
Very cool. So, all right. So now that we've kind of established we've got the current facility up and running, there was kind of one thing that I did want to talk about, and especially with Bob, that I know is very dear to him, and that was a very big accomplishment for the club. Bob, could you touch on a bit about the Rotary World Championships that we had hosted? Because I know some people have heard of it, some people don't know of it, other people do. But I'd like you to talk a bit about the Rotary World Championships we hosted.
I co-hosted it. My partner in crime, Jay Davies, was, we were both responsible for bringing that. It was an absolute monumental. But before I get into that, I just wanted to mention something. When you drive into the curling club, and then you're going to turn left to go in front of it, if you look way down on your right, all those trees that are planted, lots of trees. We planted, that was agreement with the Gardens Ice House to plant those trees because it was a pretty open field down there. But anyway, to get back to the Rotary, we had a great committee, didn't we, Jay? It's another long project where we had about 25 teams and all the wives and friends that came from 4 countries. And we had a monumental, the meetings we had to provide, we were one of the first hosts to ever provide transportation directly from the airport to the hotel.
Yep.
Which wound up, God bless the soul of Bill McDonald, we set that up. We rented vans. We were able to drive the curlers back and forth from the hotel to the curling club throughout the tournament. But anything else you can remember, Jay? We had to host we had a big party, welcoming party over at Blob's Park.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And then on Tuesday night, we had Rotarians and curling club members and friends of curling that hosted all the curlers at their homes for dinner.
That's right.
And that was quite
that was a blast.
Susan Davies did an absolutely wonderful job in getting all that scheduled because it was quite a feat to get them all out of their hotel and on the way to people's houses in about half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And there were people from all over and everybody really enjoyed that. And then
Well, we had all those drivers, Bob McDonald got all his golfing buddies to be drivers all week so that we had vans driving people back and forth from the hotel. So none of these visiting curlers had to do any driving, which is good because we
Yeah.
had 2 bars set up. And then we had all that ice next door. You know, we made actually some premium ice. Rich from Pittsburgh came down, and Clay Carr was a wonderful guy. You know, normally what is it, like $360 an hour to rent his ice, and he pretty much gave the ice to us that week because we needed for many days before in order to make curling ice out of a skating facility. But it turned out to be world-class sheets of ice that Rich and Ken Ray put together.
And all of the stones for the ice rink all came from Chesapeake.
Correct.
Needed that for the week.
Those that curled on the ice rink said that ice was better than what was in our own ice shed because it was very level, hadn't been scraped. It was great to curl on. I curled on it against Sean Murray that following Monday night.
And one other, no one else, all the lunches that we had throughout the week were all put on by Rotary clubs in our district. So it was clubs from Washington, Silver Spring, and Baltimore. They sent out a group of people and put on the entire lunch for free, which was really, really wonderful, really helped us out.
Do you recall what year that was, Bob?
2012.
It was 2012. All right.
That was a big, big event for our club. And we were very, very pleased at how well it turned out.
Bob, were there other places that were in the running for this event and we won it, or was we just kind of there at the right place at the right time?
Jay, do you want to?
Yes, this happens. The Worlds happens every 2 years, and we had to compete 2 years before that against Chicago and Lake Placid.
Wow.
We put a super package together and just lied.
Yeah.
Didn't you guys win that one time before we opened the facility, or right after we opened the facility? When it was us hosting?
Yeah, we did. Bob and I and Mark Curtis. I don't know if anybody remembers Mark Curtis. And then Ken, we won in 2002. We were in Edinburgh. We won the Worlds in 2002.
Yes, Bob.
I want to mention, during that tournament, all the wives were taken care of every day. And that was because of Susan Davies. They took them on tours of what, it was remarkable what happened that week, how everybody was taken care of. And Susan did a wonderful job. Didn't she, Jay?
Yep.
That was absolutely fantastic. And I think everybody really, really enjoyed their week here.
Yeah, I hear that they're still talking about the Worlds in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Which Worlds? I hope the Rotary Worlds?
Yeah.
The World. Okay. All right. Well, I think that I remember that event as well. And I think there was a lot of us who actually played some league nights on those sheets.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool experience. But yeah, I guess we can't thank you enough for that event. That was quite a feather in the cap of the Potomac Curling Club's history, at least the facility as we know it today. So I guess I kind of want to open it up to other questions about to the audience about anything in particular that they want to ask about, anything from the pre-Cabin John days to up until today. You can either raise your hand through the Zoom or physically, or send me a chat, and we'd be happy to have some more questions for the panel. If anybody has anything, I hope we do. Or if not, I will ask for some more comments from our panel. Okay. All right. So the person who's raising their hand is a special guest. This is my mother. Mom, the floor is yours.
Hi, Mom.
Mom, this is the part where you ask a question and you want to mute yourself. Well, this didn't work out too well. All right, so forget that. Jimmy's got a question. Where was the Safeway from the pre-Cabin John days? Does anybody know where that facility actually was?
Out of Wheaton, wasn't it, Bob?
Yeah. I don't know where. That was a long time before.
Yeah, that was pre-1970.
Anybody else have anything they would like to ask, or any other anything they'd like to add? Here's a good question from
I
Eric.
can't resist. I can't resist.
We want to talk about the airplane.
Oh.
Yeah. Bruce, your laughter, I think I would like you to answer that question, please.
Yeah, well, we have, for those that don't know much about Potomac Curling Club and its history, the Potomac Curling Club does have a private airplane that we keep out at Dulles Airport. It's an old DC-3. And Fred, every year during our annual banquet, would be off to some bonspiel somewhere in the world in the spirit of curling, which was the name of the airplane. And yes, we do have an airplane. I've never seen it because it's never over at Dulles when I go out there. Bob, have you ever seen the spirit of curling?
Never have.
I've never
It's a
laid
phantom
eyes.
airplane.
But there is.
Fred is all over the world, they say.
Yeah, right. So, one of the traditions that we had in the curling club for many years is our newsletter was known as the Spanner Banner. And what is Hal holding up there? He's got a
little boy.
Oh, is that? But anyway, the Spanner Banner was really named for Fred Spanner. And way back in the day, we used to have a little emblem on the top of the page that came from the Uniroyal Junior Curling Championship. And Bob will remember getting a letter from Uniroyal saying, that's a trademarked emblem and you can't use it. And they told us to remove it. But the Spanner Banner was read every year. And, the Spanner Banner came out as our newsletter. And every year at our annual banquet, we would have the letter from Fred Spanner, who was off in the spirit of curling somewhere in the world. And he would go over all the events that occurred during the course of the curling year. And then
but Neil Christensen actually got on his telephone and talked to Fred and told us what was going on during the meetings, because Fred called every year during the banquet.
That was Bittner, wasn't it? Wasn't Bittner that took the call?
No, Neil Christensen.
Was it? All right.
Yeah, Howard's right. It was Neil.
Neil Christensen, yeah.
Yeah.
But usually what they would do is they'd put together all the events that occurred during the year, put it into sort of a narrative for the letter. And at the end, we would reveal the one person who did something that earned them the Fred Spanner Award. And I do remember Hal Mcgrady winning the Fred Spanner Award one year when he was looking at seven stones in the house.
No, that's a different.
We're gonna get
he
to
throws
that.
a stone and he taps his opponent in for 8.
That was the third time he got it.
And so Hal got it that year, but we would give out the award every year for somebody who did the most unbelievable thing on the ice or, in their life. But that was a tradition that we often had. And, sadly, we don't call our newsletter any longer the Fred Spanner or the Spanner Banner, nor do we give out the Spanner Award. But that is a tradition from the club.
Yes, Bob.
Here's here's a copy of one. That's back in 2004.
All right.
That's what it looked like. Back in those before before we had using the internet and all that, we used to have to print these things up and mail them out to members, which was a big task. Thanks.
We used to mail them out.
Bill and Cheryl White took care of that.
All right. I think this was already answered, but I
I will unmute.
Michael, you got your hand raised? What's up?
Yeah, I just remember one specific recipient, other than Hal, of the Spanner Award was Harvey Chalmers, who somewhere in the early 2000s got his car stuck in the parking lot at the chop tank.
That's right. Yeah,
Stuck in the mud, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I was there. I believe it was Bob and Harvey had come back from the Legion or the VFW or whatever and came into the chop tank for a while. And while we were in the chop tank, spring arrived and the parking lot got a little muddy. I was leaving at dark 30 and Bob and Harvey decided they were going to leave too. And as they drove by me, the car kept getting lower and lower and lower. And it was completely down to the door frame. That's how deep they were in the mud. I fortunately had a AAA membership and called AAA, and they advised that they would be there in 2 or 3 hours. So now we're talking, it's 2 o'clock. Oh no, Stu Godden was with you also. And Stu was wandering around in the mud and just all over the place. And I said, Stu's gonna get hurt. I'll take him back to the hotel. So I drove him back to the hotel, got back to the chop tank, still waiting for AAA to show up. I'm not sure what time they showed up, but they did eventually get the car out. I know the next morning Harvey took the car to the car wash to get it cleaned, but I think that only made the mud muddier, and you could see the wheels sort of flopping every time he drove. And as the mud dried, you could hear it in the wheel wells rattling around. And then when I got back to the hotel, like I say, it was early in the morning, and it got to the lobby, I could see where Stu had wandered through the lobby because there was mud tracks all the way up to the elevator. So yeah, I think Harvey got the award that year for that. Yeah.
Wow, those are some hard stories to top. Maybe that's one of the reasons we don't give it out anymore. That's pretty impressive. Anybody have anything else any other questions?
I'd like to
Please
defend.
don't.
I'd like to defend the 8-ender I gave up. Okay, because there is, if you look in the Potomac Curling Club history, you're going to find an inaccurate account of that. And first of all, you need to know that we had an excellent team. I was skip. Deb Ferracci was the vice. Dominic Glanville was the second. And gosh darn, I can't remember his name. He was a new curler, was the lead. We had a great team. And there were a lot of stones in the house. And this was arena ice in Cleveland Skating Club. When I came out for the last shot, the hammer, there was a lot of stones in there. Some of them ours and some of them theirs. And somehow or another, as I was trying to get past this one guard to get in there and get something, arena ice does what it does, and it hit one of those guards. Boom, that's it. I still think we should have measured a couple of those stones were on the outer edge. But that's the accurate account of exactly what happened. And the vice skim of that team broke her ankle that night dancing. They were so happy about it. So that's it, the curling part of it, the drinking part of it. That's it.
Oh, Joe?
Yes, I'm here. I had to pop outside for a second to let my dog out. That's why I have the camera off. But yeah, if anybody has anything else they'd like to add, please do. Bob.
Well, I was going to mention that we hosted the Discus Tour for the first time in 2007 and then in 2017, which was quite an honor. And they all wanted to come to Washington. It was a big project that only took a half a day. But they would come in from the bus. They may have flown in from Utica or wherever, got off the bus, which we provided, or no, which they had set up. And they come out to the club, immediately had some coffee and donuts and that, out and curled, brought them back off the ice and kept added up all the scores and all that, which they were doing across the United States. And then everybody said goodbye. They all got on the bus, and then they took them for a tour of Washington, and we had set up a place, the hotel right near our club, where and that's at the Comfort Inn. And then they stayed there overnight and would go on to the next destination the next day. But the club support was incredible for that. All the people that came out and helped prepare the food, serve the food, do all the ceremonies, the march on ceremony. It was absolutely incredible. I just wanted to mention that.
But I
expect
say
to do
I
that.
was at that event when they came because I was on the Scott tour that went to Scotland the 5 years before, actually 4 years, because we went in 2001 rather than 2002, which would be supposed to go, because the Olympics was going to be in Utah, and so they moved it up to we left in October of 2001 to go to Scotland. And if you think about it, it was 5 weeks after September 11th. And it was rather interesting to arrive in Scotland at that time. And we were quite, well, people called us the gutty team because we came despite all that situation. Great experience, fantastic. The Scots are great.
Just remember, in 2027, they'll probably asking us to asking to come back.
Very good. Roman, yes.
Leonard, can you see this?
Yeah.
Remember him? Ed White.
Oh, Ed White.
He always had poems to say at the annual meeting.
Poet.
Yeah. If you'd like, I could read this one paragraph. A stone well aimed with perfect weight, a pair of sweepers in perfect rhythm, a closely played game decided by skill. Those are a few of my favorite things.
Wonderful gentleman.
He was.
Joe, a big supporter of our juniors.
Yes.
Joe, can I say something in support of Hal Mcgrady?
Please do, Dave.
It has to do with 8-enders. Having been on the receiving end of an 8-ender, and Jay Davis can vouch for this, I know how they happen. I always wondered, how does anyone other than a total novice ever get an 8-ender scored against them? How could that happen? Well, now I know how it happens. And this is what Hal said, reminded me of this. During the end, you always see there's a way to win the end, if not win it, to cut the other team down to 1 or 2. And in my case, I was vice that night. I had no business being a vice, but I was vice that night. And our team wasn't horrible. It's not the kind of team you would think would lose an 8-ender. So I remember on the last shot, there were a lot of rocks in the house. I don't think I was quite aware that Jay's team had 7 in the house, but there were a lot there. But the middle was still pretty open. And so my skip, who I will not name out of respect for him, threw his last shot, and I watched it. It was heavy and it was offline, and I watched it hit and spill out. And of course, when you have 7 rocks in the house, that you have a lot of backing for your own rocks. So Jay's rock didn't spill out. And then I stopped and I counted up Jay's rocks, and there were 7 there. And then I thought, who has the hammer? Oh no, Jay has the hammer. And of course he put the 8th rock in the house. And it's, if you've never had an 8 scored against you, you got to know it's a horrible experience. You know, everything stops, you know, and the ice clears and the cameras come out, and you kind of look around hoping that a hole will open up in the ice that you can crawl down into. And so afterwards we were broomstacking, and I knew Jay had been curling for a long time. So I said, so Jay, how many 8-unders have you had in your experience? And Jay looked at me, he said, this is my first. And so I thought, oh my God, we're his first 8-under, how horrible. But anyway, I just wanted to share that, Hal, because your shot has a name, and that you probably are aware of this, that is invoked around the club to this day. And I just want to, I feel your pain.
I do have one question that came into me from the chat, unrelated to 8-unders. And I'm thinking maybe somebody from the panel can answer this question. The first set of rocks that we got had engraved names on it. Does anyone know how that came about, or who was behind that, or how do those names and people in those handles come about? That's the actual question. Bob.
That was part of our fundraising effort.
Yeah, and the handles.
That was another, because we're doing everything we could to raise money to get the club built. And what did we charge, Jay? $200 stone, or $100?
Yeah, and I have to comment about that. I actually bought a couple when we first started the club, and then Potomac in their wisdom decided to sell them, and I had to buy them back.
Yeah,
so,
I remember that. Yeah.
Michael.
When I was a third-year curler in '99, I was on a team with Dave Thompson and another guy whose name I don't remember, and we scored an 8-ender against a team, none of whose names I remember, in the late draw at Cabin John. And I mean, again, third-year curler at Cabin John, so you can rest assured I had very little to do with it, except apparently I got 3 rocks in the house. But the funny thing about it was that because it was at Cabin John and it was in 1999 and people weren't walking around every day with cameras in their pockets, in order to get it certified with the USCA, we had to have a photo. Late draw at Cabin John on a Monday night, nobody had a camera. So the next week we came back and faked a photo and sent that in. We just threw rocks into the house, and God knows if they bore any relationship to reality of the week before, but that's what we did.
Can I admit that I almost gave up another 8-ender?
We're all friends here, Hal, of course.
but I'll tell you, it was against Debbie McCormick. We were on arena ice where she came. This is in North Carolina. What's it called?
Carolina Classic.
Carolina Classic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So anyway, she was there as a volunteer, where she came in and people got to curl with her if they bought into a raffle or something. And I was player, and she was ahead, and said, well, let's play one more end. Okay, we're gonna play one more end. Well, we were just throwing stones down there. All of a sudden we realized she's got a lot of stones in there. And the crowd started gathering. Oh my God, Debbie McCormick is going to get an 8-ender. So sure enough, it comes down to the last shot. And frankly, I hope she'd made it. It'd be nice to brag and say, you gave up an 8-ender to Debbie McCormick. But her last shot came in and hit one of these screwy things in the ice and didn't go or was supposed to. But that would have been a chance to, give up 2. How many people do you know that gave up 2 8-enders?
Anybody want to raise their hand on that one? Tim, you got your hand raised. I don't think it's related to that, but
No, I've given up 4 enders, if that makes any difference. No. Does anyone remember the year that we, at the annual banquet, when we were raffling off the curling stones, the old stones? And we found out that they did not belong to us for us to be able to raffle or auction them off. I think we got 2 sold before we found that out. So there's a few $100 in our coffers. So who knows?
it's very good. Anybody else have anything, any other stories they'd like to share or questions they'd like to ask before we decide to call it an evening? And with that, I guess I just wanted to say, oh, Anne, did you have your hand raised? Please.
Yeah. Well, for a piece of our history was repaying that World Curling Federation loan. And I was at the USCA annual meeting and paid it in person, not in cash, with a lovely check. And it was pretty special. It wasn't just a transaction. Potomac Curling Club had reliably paid every year on time exactly what we owed. And for that last check, the USCA really honored it. And they appreciated that we were so good with paying it back, and it allowed them to have the confidence to continue the program so that other clubs could also have access to that kind of funds. So just a reminder that Potomac Curling Club, as awesome as it is within its own world, really has had quite a ripple effect. There are probably clubs in the United States that got money that we don't even know about because we were so good in honoring that program. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that.
Excellent words from a past president. Thank you, Anne, very much for that. Thank you. Okay, unless anyone else has anything they'd like to add, I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone on the panel and everyone else who participated tonight with their stories and their questions and their answers. I want to thank any member of the board of directors. Oh, Tim. Oh, it was an applause. Thank. I want to thank anybody, any of the members of the board of directors for putting this together. And with that being said, I hope that everyone has a lovely rest of the evening. Everyone continues to stay safe and healthy. And with that, good curling.
Thanks, Joe, for hosting. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Joe.
it.
Great job, Joe. And boy, it's great to see a lot of you people I haven't seen in a long, long time. That was a wonderful evening for me.
Good curling, all.
Indeed.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Joe.